Bibin, you. Oh my God. we gotta put a lid on your jokes and your film ideas.
Okay, I would have had millions of views. But...
I'm glad I missed all of that stuff. So I gather you guys weren't having these intense discussions on what a MacGuffin is versus Deus Ex Machina. No way.
Absolutely.
While including some jokes.
Okay, I got ya. All right. So any thoughts on MacGuffins and Deus Ex Machina in terms of what they have in common and why we should be careful or avoid if at all possible?
I guess it can be easy, like, try not to have like the MacGuffin save the day, because as the audience doesn't care about it, it can turn into Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Like, quite a disappointing conclusion.
Yes, absolutely. So, if we think about the Tesseract, and we think about the Infinity Gauntlet with the Infinity Stones, right? What ultimately saves the day?
The people, the person wielding it.
I am Iron Man. Boom. Tony Stark dies. What ultimately saves the day?
Tony Stark.
Yeah, Tony Stark.
He
He sacrifices. First of all, the gauntlet causes incredible amounts of pain, and then he gives up his life, right? So that is something relatable. It wasn't the Infinity Gauntlet. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the solution, like I said, the problem has to be something relatable. The solution has to be something relatable as well. Right? It has to be something that, is believable that we can achieve in our own lives. Now, I'm not saying we should sacrifice our lives to save anybody if we don't have to, but it's something that we can understand or innately relate to, right? So those are usually the most powerful solutions, right? And it's not necessarily anything that's new, right? Because that mythic hero's journey has been around for a long, long time, right? In fact, Carl Jung has studied it to an insane degree to try and figure out what it is that draws us to this sort of archetype in terms of the hero and the villain and the conflict and all that kind of stuff. If you think about it, that is a very powerful premise that resonates in a number of different stories. There's got to be a hero, there's got to be a villain, right?
Isn't a good example of that Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight ending, where Batman sacrifices, saying that how he takes on the things like Harvey Dent was actually a good guy for the people rather than saying the Joker won.
Yeah. I haven't seen that actually, so I'd be really interested in checking that out.
Because you were saying about how the clock is ticking, pushing the guy into like radical decisions.
Yes.
Because I'd say the Joker does that in the Dark Knight. He pushes Batman to his limits.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking when you said that. I was thinking of the Dark Knight, really.
Yeah, and I mean, it wouldn't be entertaining if our characters weren't all pushed to their limits, right? Like if our character comfortably achieved their goal, there isn't really any sense of drama, right? Oh, that was easy, right? This is why, in my humble opinion, the Rambo franchise got stale really, really quickly. Now, we make fun of Rambo. Rambo's almost a cultural icon right up there with Dracula. It's very, very easy to make fun of. But the very first Rambo film, First Blood, was incredibly powerful and still holds up to today. Sorry?
Yeah, it's like one of the best Sylvester Stallone films.
Yes, yeah. And I've seen it again recently, and it's still such a powerful film, right? Yeah. And in a lot of ways, there's a number of things working in First Blood, but one of the biggest things is the fact that Rambo's outnumbered and outgunned, right? Even though we know he's ex-Special Forces, et cetera, right? But still, it's not easy for him to challenge these cops, these deputies, right? We still get a sense of a struggle. And what's incredibly relatable, or one of the big things of why First Blood was so successful, is that a lot of people related to that sense of alienation, that sense of not really belonging properly in a society or a community, right? And I know for sure, for me, the point of relating to Rambo is this idea that you are outside of society, right? And that society didn't really want you around. And, part and parcel, that was my kind of exploration into punk, and I got into that and all that kind of stuff. So for me, there was a big sort of emotional connection with First Blood, this idea of being an outsider and celebrating the fact that you're an outsider. Being an outsider in and of itself is an identity that a lot of creatives gravitate to. So there's an author named Camus who wrote a book called L'Étranger, which is really big, and it's basically called The Outsider, right? So that's one of the things that resonated powerfully in First Blood. Now, if we take a look at what First Blood is, it's an ex-Special Forces Vietnam vet shooting up a small force of deputies in a town in the middle of nowhere, right? So we can't really relate to that. But we have to make that story relatable to the audience. So do you see what I mean? So it's the same thing with your guys' story. It's about sort of journeying into it and trying to figure out what these connection points are. And so there are various techniques that previous writers and screenwriters have used to help us find those connections and wire up our audience to our story properly, right? And then, again, there's that clock, the crucible, and the contract. That's one. There's intention and obstacle. That's the other, right? How you keep that story ticking over is to provide an intention and then hit the butt, and there's your obstacle. So to get past that obstacle, you have another intention, and then you're hit with and then, which makes things worse, and then you have another intention. So it's this ladder of increasingly desperate, crazier ideas as things get more and more difficult for the hero, right? So what would take your hero to the edge of quote-unquote death before they can complete their mission, right? So that's something I want you guys to think about, because you've definitely got the conditions for it. In the middle of the desert isn't exactly a friendly climate. So we've got these sort of hazardous environment conditions. We can very easily take your character to a very, very dark point, right? The thing that we cheer for is that when we take that hero to a very, very dark place where it's perfectly reasonable to give up, the audience goes, yeah, you can give up now, man. In fact, I encourage you to give up. It's just crazy. I can't watch this. It's painful to watch, right? And yet the hero continues through, right? Now, this is the point where we start to move from the relatable problem into escapist fiction. Because then the hero takes that bold step further than we would normally take. And then they truly become a hero and they earn our hero worship, right? Because they take it that one step further, right? So again, with Iron Man, Tony Stark, he gives up his own life to save the universe. And I have severe doubts that I would do that in a similar situation, right? So it's the ultimate sacrifice. So that's something that I encourage you guys to think about. Any thoughts or comments on that? No, you can make plenty of jokes to entertain my stream, but you can't pipe in with any thoughts or comments? No? All right. I heard a sound of disagreement.
That was fully David, not me.
Yeah, I thought it might have been David. The guy that finds every cloud for every silver lining. No, I'm just joking.
Wait.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay, so let me see if I can pop open the. I thought I pre-opened it here somewhere. No, I did not. Okay.
Do that joke again so I can do the button.
No. We're all super friendly here, right?
Oh, I don't know about
Right.
Ben. I don't know about
Right.
Ben. I don't know
Right.
about Ben. Ben did the worst thing you could do on World War II yesterday to me. I'm not forgetting.
World War II, what?
He backstabbed me yesterday, yeah? He backstabbed me. No.
You need to let it go.
Wait, World War II, what on earth are you on about?
Game, Call of Duty. The same team, yeah? He saw me shoot at the enemy, and what does Ben do? Ben thought it'd be funny to shoot me.
Oh, Ben's one of those gamers. Oh, yeah, okay.
No, you are misremembering that. You killed me.
To be fair, I played GTA with Given, and I believe Ben in this situation.
Hey, hold on. Some bullshit going on here.
Anybody out there watching the stream see what I got to deal with? All right.
Again, I've got to record it. I have evidence.
For this lesson,
Oh
because
no.
I think he might need it.
What's that? Oh my god. Okay, so let's take a look at just having a quick. Yeah, okay. I'll pick and choose. I'll cherry pick rather my way through this particular presentation because there's a few things here that relate to what I'm talking about today, right? So first off, let's play this. Yeah, I know it's another Last of Us thing. Yeah, but it's good. If it works, it's not working. That's okay. It's opened up in another thing here. Okay.
Oh no.
Can you guys hear audio on the clip?
Yeah.
Okay, let's watch this.
Oh no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me, I know this hurts. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby, I know it hurts. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby, I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me. Come on. No. 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 Please.
Crazy. What do you guys think of that?
Very touching.
Yeah. So, why is it touching?
The father and daughter bonded.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is it's touching because you related to it somehow. Right? So why does that moment have meaning for you?
Because everyone can, well, nearly everyone can relate to someone dying.
Yes and no.
Now it's happening to this guy.
Yes and no. Yes and no. You're right on the thing that not you implied. Not everyone can relate to somebody dying. But what is the relatable thing that's going on here?
Apocalypse.
Yeah, I can relate to Apocalypse. Yeah, I had one yesterday. No, I'll tell you. What's relatable is being helpless to help a loved one. Right? Being desperate to help somebody you love, but not being able to do anything about it, in a sense of powerlessness. Right? That's the ingredient that's working. Even though, not everybody's experienced a daughter dying. I'm sure you guys don't have daughters out there anywhere, I hope. You guys are too young. But yeah, it's that sort of experience of feeling helpless to help a loved one, right? Do you see what I mean there? Now, I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about the construction of this particular sequence, right? Because remember, as an animated sequence, nothing is random, nothing happens by chance. Everywhere the camera points, every 24 frames per second is deliberately placed there, right? People scrub the timeline back and forth to get that camera placement perfect, right? So in this particular presentation, I followed up with a little story. I won't go through it, but the story is about this time where my son accidentally got some chili powder in his eyes, right? And he made sounds very, very similar to what this girl character was making. And he was asking me to make it stop, right? He was relying on me to take that pain away from him. I mean, it was excruciating pain. It happened by total accident, right? And he was really looking at me to be a hero, but there was nothing I could do but to sort of clean his eyes out and say, you just got to wait it out, man. But that feeling of powerlessness was there, right? And made me relate to the thing that Joel was going through at the time, right? So this is a small example, and I'm using a very personal experience to show you that the most powerful stories resonate at that deep a personal level. Now, why did this scene happen at the beginning of The Last of Us?
To have some dramatic thing that starts everything off. Well,
But why this? There's lots of dramatic things you can do, right? You can have Joel stand there and watch his home burn to the ground. Like, my home.
yeah, but this hits harder than that.
Because this kind of mirrors his relationship with Ellie.
Yes, thank you.
And his choices later on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't actually ever seen The Last of Us.
Yeah, I got
Any games of it.
So you guys haven't played it, eh?
No.
I finished it a few months ago.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
caught up.
What was your overall impression, by the way?
I don't know if it's just because I'm years getting to it, but I thought it was alright, but the ending really kind of turned me off.
Yes, everybody hated the ending. Well, except myself. I thought it was a brave choice, but it didn't quite work for what people were expecting.
It's a brave choice, but I kind of wish for something called The Last of Us. I kind of
Wait,
wish
this
it was
isn't
a player
the
choice.
end of the game?
No, this wasn't the end.
No, this was in the beginning. The whole story starts with this. Well,
This moment is what makes the end, though.
Yes.
It's why the ending happens, basically.
Yes. So why does it matter to Joel to save Ellie?
Because he can't go through this again. And now he has the power to stop it.
Yes and no. On the surface. On the surface. Right? Again, this class is about digging deeper, right? So why is it important to Joel to save Ellie?
I don't know why deeper than that.
Well, I talked about how this was a sense of powerlessness, right? That Joel couldn't make it stop.
Yeah.
Right? So saving Ellie is something he can do.
Yeah.
Right? So it gives him, in a lot of ways, if he saves Ellie, he saved his daughter.
Okay.
But it's more powerful than that. It's more powerful than that. I will show you how deep people go when designing cinematic sequences. Again, remember, this isn't random. It's deliberate. Okay? So if we come back Well, it's not this. Sorry, where's my YouTube? Okay.
Oh no.
Right. So,
I know, baby. It hurts.
okay, now watch what happens at the moment of Sarah's death, right?
Come on, baby, please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby.
What happened?
He was not looking at her.
He was not looking at her, right? You're there trying to save your loved one at the moment of their death. And you can't even do that. You can't even be there. You weren't even looking. How powerful a sense of guilt would that create in you?
Okay, I get it.
Yeah?
I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, no, nobody noticed it before, but you're not supposed to notice these things, right? It's supposed to be subtle, and that's what pulls you along into the story, right? But remember, as a camera animator, you are animating handheld, and you are making the decision to have her death happen off screen, right? So we all miss it, right? And suddenly she's gone, right? So that speaks volumes to not just the powerlessness, but also to the guilt that drives Joel forward. To say, right at the moment when my daughter needed me, I was not there. Right? How powerful is that? That's crazy emotional powerful. In like a shot that lasted 2 seconds, 3 seconds. That's how powerful a device you guys have in terms of cinematic narrative and a cinematic camera. Because within the space of mere seconds, you can establish a guilt that drives the main character through the entire story. In 3 seconds. Right? And that's why I want you to understand the importance of the relatable emotional context of your story, and why I keep hammering the fact that it's got to be something that we can relate to, because that will provide the rocket fuel to take your audience through the rest of the story, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What do you think of that? Just that quick little shot.
That's even sadder.
Even sadder, yeah. Which is the goal. What we want to do in any kind of cinematic narrative is go beyond representing reality, obviously, and it goes beyond a shorthand of reality. It is like distilled down to the most insanely intense part of reality, all strung together, right? I mean, that's what that sort of escapist narrative sort of moment is. It's like the best possible moments and the worst possible moments, right? And I mean, in the end of the day, you've only got 110 pages or 100 pages in a script to be able to tell a story, so it's incredibly compact and distilled. You know, in a television series, it's 40 minutes, 40 pages, 50 pages in the UK. And then for you guys, it's 3 minutes, so 3 pages. 3 pages of really intense storytelling, right? So I'm just going to move forward. Yeah, no, I won't talk about that, right? Oh, yeah, so... Yeah. I just wanted to talk briefly about some of the moral dilemmas that sort of carry us through in terms of why we watch films and what draws us to them, right? So in this particular slide, we have Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, where Spock makes the ultimate sacrifice, very much like Tony Stark did, right? But he does it for logic, right? He says his solution to the Kobayashi Maru test is all about the greater good. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, right? So this harkens back to the train example, right? So yes, one way of thinking. Very logical, utilitarian. In the sequel, Kirk rounds up his crew, steals a starship, and goes and rescues Spock, right? And he tells Spock at the end of the movie that for him, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. So the whole crew have sacrificed their career to go get him, right? And Spock says that's not logical, and Kirk says it's human, right? So then it begs the question, whose side are you on? Who's got the better approach to life, right? So this is Jeremy Bentham, and Jeremy Bentham was very much a utilitarian thinker, right? So what does that mean? Well, he was very much about oh man, I hope I'm getting this right. I think I'm getting it right. So Jeremy Bentham was very much about the needs of the many, right? Whereas Immanuel Kant was more about the morality within each individual is more important, right? Now, these are two very famous philosophers that have been discussed for centuries. And again, there is no easy answer to this sort of moral dilemma. And that's why these questions still entertain us, right? So is it, if we take a look at heroes and villains, what is right? Doing what you have to for the greater good? Or doing what you know is right no matter what the consequences? Jeremy Bentham or Immanuel Kant? Let's talk about a bit about that. Who do you think is right?
None of them.
But we've got a train rushing towards five guys. We need...
The train again.
Wasn't this kind of the argument in Captain America Civil War?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You'll see this argument factored into quite a lot of those Jungian-type hero myths, right? Joseph Campbell was also a huge fan of Jung, and this is why he spent a large part of his academic career studying myth all over the world, right? So, yeah, very much so. The beauty of Civil War is it took that problem literally and put one team of heroes on one side, another team on the other side, and had them fight it out, right? So this is one of those things that's sort of engaging. The what's his name? The soldier, not Universal Soldier. The Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier was an embodiment of that problem, right? He's Bucky. To Captain America, he's Bucky, right? But to everybody else, he's the threat. So that's a wonderful sort of situation to put our Avengers in, right? In terms of making a decision. And you'll see that a lot. Hopefully you'll see that a lot more now that we've discussed this, right? Okay, so not the train again. I promise I will not talk about the train anymore. But you get the idea of what I'm driving towards, right? It's just this overarching understanding of why stories work and why they're so powerful, and some of the ingredients that we need to sort of start to balance, right? So let's take your robot character and make him more human. Let's take that robot character and make the journey and the dilemma something that we can relate to. And we did a similar sort of thing with your kid on the bike last year, right? And the ghost. And I think we landed in a fairly decent place, right? I really kind of felt the emotional impact of that story and that journey. And that sort of, that hero moment, really, when the kid rides the bike. And he's hit that moment of elation and satisfaction. And it all worked for me. It all came together. So it's the same sort of thing with your guys' story plan that you have now. So again, you've got sort of the events laid out the way you need it. Now you need to start carving into it a little bit deeper, right? So what I'm going to do is provide you guys with a link. Let me just actually open this up. Where is it again? And we'll go back to that story problem-solving spreadsheet that I think I showed you guys last year. Where's story plans? I can't find the most recent template, but that's okay. We'll talk a little bit about this guy over here. So, yeah, we'll start there. So, to help us kind of figure out the framework of the story that we're trying to tell, one of the things that you have to figure out, or rather sort of fill in this particular chart, are answers to this. The story is, what is it? Identifying the genre. About, who it's about, who wants what, but actually emotionally needs what, sets out to do what, which I walked you through this whole lesson. What is the first barrier? What is the second barrier? What is the climax? How do we make it even worse? And then what is the solution, right? What is the resolution? And how is the main character changed? That's a good question. I'm going to dig up a better spreadsheet, but while I'm doing that, I'm going to ask you, how has your main character changed?
That's a good question.
Because if your main character hasn't changed, well, what's driving us to watch your story? Don't get me wrong. A character doesn't necessarily have to change. It's a huge argument. And there are quite a few stories out there with unchanging characters. So the example off the top of my head that I can think of immediately is Naruto. Naruto is a character that arguably doesn't really change, right? But how does your character change? And is it necessary for them to change? We can talk about that. Do they need to change?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm not sure how to make that come across on the little robot guy.
I don't know if they would change, would they? Because they're just... I don't know.
Well, do you think... Oh yeah, well, no, that's a good sort of area to explore. Do you think in that... your story that the character necessarily needs to change?
Oh, nah. I don't think so.
Okay, so that's cool because you can have a character stand by their convictions. So that's cool. That could be
that's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
In that, like, kind of everything is telling him not to try and make this journey. Like, he gets a message from something saying, Robot 3 didn't turn up.
Yeah.
Abandon mission. But the robot, like, kind of chooses, no, this delivery needs to be made. And it's all about proving that he can do it.
It's not meant for one task he can do.
It's like he shows that he can do it.
Yep.
He believes himself that he can conquer the next challenge.
Yeah, I get that. That's cool. So that's an unchanging character, right? So then what is the reward? What is the reward for standing by your convictions?
far as we've talked about, it's just the delivery being made, but I don't know if the character himself is getting rewarded.
So I can give you a hint. And again, it's not a formula. It's not necessarily the case, and you don't have to listen to what I say. That's the wonderful fluidity of storytelling. But in my kind of estimation, or in the way I approach developing ideas, if your main character is solving a problem, they need to change, right? But if you have an unchanging character that stands by the strength of their convictions, then the story world needs to change. Do you see that? Very, very simple example. If your character stands by their conviction and successfully makes that delivery, what if all the other robots are like, wow, we don't need to just do our job or leave jobs that nobody else is doing to just rot. We can all help each other. And then suddenly the whole factory changes its ethos and how it handles deliveries.
This is actually a prequel to Detroit Become Human.
But do you see what I mean? Oh, and then suddenly your story becomes sort of a metaphor for autonomy and for free will and things like that, right? And then, so in a sense, the robot has stopped being a robot in the classic sense and has become sentient, right? So there's lots of stuff you can play with there.
Yeah, I really like that idea of like everything changing after because of what he did, but at the same time that's going to be tough to show.
Yeah, yep. Well, I don't necessarily agree, because you have quite a few examples of stuff like that in various movies. Like in WALL-E, where all the overweight people suddenly, one person decides to try standing, then the next, then they all start standing. You could do something subtle like that, like a whole bunch of robots there. I'd imagine they're all instanced, the same model. And then one of them picks up this package that's been abandoned, and another one does, and another one, right? So yeah. Again, if you try to think about it visually, there might be ways of translating sophisticated ideas. It harkens back to what I told you guys before. Don't talk it up, mock it up, right? It's easy to talk yourself into and out of intellectual ideas, because when you're thinking, oh, I can't possibly communicate those complex ideas. But then you sit and you storyboard it and you realize, wow, I can tell my audience that a father has a lot of guilt in a 3-second cutaway. Right? Do you know what I mean? So when you start thinking visually, you'll be surprised at what you can discover in terms of how much story you can compact into a shot. So for example, the Last of Us trailer with her playing guitar in that room, and that room telling us volumes about where she got the guitar, right? So it's that kind of a thing that I kind of encourage you guys. Again, don't talk it up, mock it up. Try a visual, see if it works, right? So for you guys, I think the logical next stage would be to take your ideas, work on them a little bit more, talk. I guess you guys are all in a group again this year. So talk amongst yourselves and try to figure out how you're going to sort of streamline your story. But that will only take you so far on paper. And then you got to start doing thumbnail sketches to say, how can we do this visually? How can we maximize the shot for storytelling power, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I will clean up this template. This is the most recent iteration because I keep adding to it. It's an evolutionary process. So we got those questions that you have to ask, right? And I won't talk about that. So basically, I'd like to know the ambition of your character, and I know robots don't have ambition, but let's forget about that. Let's because your robot is a character. So what is your character's ambition? So your character has a strength of conviction. To what end for them? Right? To what end? So I'll give you an example. I'm watching Kim's Convenience on Netflix. It's just a comedy, lighthearted comedy, about a Korean couple in Toronto and they run a convenience store. And the one thing that they constantly say is that they have never closed once in 20 years, right? So that's partly their conviction, but partly their ambition. Their ambition is to never close, right? It's one of those goals that they've set for themselves. So your robot character, what is their particular goal or their ambition that feeds into that strength of character and that strength of conviction? And then we talked about intention and obstacle. I want you to think about the clock, the crucible, and the contract. Here's an interesting intellectual exercise that you might want to try, but I suspect your robot might not have enough meat in its character for this. But what are the 6 things wrong with your character? The 6 flaws that your character has that they have to work through. Could be anything from something very, very small to something very, very big. And then what has changed? What really tests the character, right? Yeah. And that's a good place to start. Just an understanding of those questions and trying to determine how you're going to handle them. Now, we'll talk also about the format, short film, 3 minutes. You know, you're not going to have a lot of time to explore a lot of these. And obviously, they're not all going to be applicable. But I want to see that exploration and a little bit of that experimentation. Because there's a lot of stuff that we can sneak into your film that can work on a very subtle level. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that takes us to 11:52. So, and I've got you guys till 12. So I'm going to round out by talking about my plans for the course. Now, generally, the induction week is about going over the module, going over the learning outcomes and all that kind of stuff. You guys know I generally tend to not do that because during the first week of classes, you're probably being hit by a couple of different lecturers doing that. So you don't need me adding to the pile. So we'll talk about that as the class starts to unfold. Now, with the research methods, again, it's all going to be narrative driven. And we'll take a look at analyzing existing stories, analyzing sort of different authors and screenwriters and the way they approach story, and then applying it to your guys' project. One of the things that I kind of want to do is to separate you guys from your project for this module. So we will take a look at existing television property, and we'll see if we can break it down, right? So, yeah, so that way you get experience with longer forms of writing. So how do you develop a 40-minute or 50-minute episode for a television series? Last year I tried a feature film, but I think it's too long, and it results in you guys having to write 110 pages of script. So it's a bit better to tackle it in terms of a television series, because a television series as well, we can talk about how we would design that across various seasons. And it gives us a lot of storytelling and character meat to play with. As well as there's a lot of versatility for, let's say, for example, we have an ensemble cast and some sort of procedural drama like Cops or Medical Show or whatever, right? One of you guys can go, well, I want to write an episode from a criminal's point of view. And it's like, okay, fine. A television show has a scope for that, whereas a feature film doesn't necessarily have that. So that's something we'll talk about next class as well. But before we dive into that, I'd like you to take away everything I talked about and see if you can apply your short film idea to that.
Okay.
Right? Cool. So any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
Not at the moment, but I'm sure I'll get some. I'll have some.
Did you get a lot out of today's session?
Yeah, it's raised some good questions for our story and got us a lot of stuff to figure out. So yeah.
Cool. My major concern is that I may end up covering stuff that we've already discussed, in which case, just let me know. And you can just go, Al, we already know this stuff, man. Jeez, get some new material, right? So just let me know, right? And then we'll take the discussions in a different direction. Right?
Alright.
Okay, cool. Oh, yeah, and so did I do the attendance? I believe that I did.
You did.
Yes, okay.
At the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. So quick little update before I call it for today. I'll talk a bit about F-Track and Perforce. So, as you know, with our location shift to a different building, the Perforce server is now down, right? And it's going to take me a little bit of a while to get it back up and running again. They have a different network structure and a whole different way of connecting up to all the studio computers, and it's just a little bit of a nightmare. If it worse comes to worse, and if we do find ourselves with loads of assets that we need to keep track of in a singular place, I'll just hook it up at home and then charge the university for my electrical bill. So that's coming, but F-Track is still operational, and F-Track has its own online storage, so we can at least start there, right? So I'll get F-Track set up, and we'll talk a little bit about how that's going to work for you guys in our next session, right? VPNing is also available for you guys. So if you need to... Sorry?
So wait, as in like connect to the uni?
Yes, yeah. So they've... last year we had a smaller sort of micro version of the VPN remoting in. I think only 1 or 2 labs were being tested, but it's now been spammed out across the entire university. So you should be able to remote into a PC at the uni and then remote pilot it, right? So if you need, I don't know, better rendering power or something like that, you can do that. That's certainly available to you. So we'll kind of explore that as well. The render farm is down. It's going to be down for the foreseeable future. And that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions or concerns, you can just drop them into the Discord, right?
Okay.
But other than that, that's it. I am done for today.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to kill the stream. See you guys.